Okay, welcome everybody to the latest Zoom conversation put on by Leeds Theosophical Society, something we've been doing for about 5.5 years now. And this afternoon, we're delighted to welcome one of our regulars and a keen supporter of Leeds Theosophical Society, Teresa Keast, who lives over in Wales and who's a regular contributor. And she's very interesting insofar as she's interested in something which has always fascinated me, which are these natural energies which run round the body, the etheric energies and so on. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that this afternoon. Teresa is a mother of four, and she's recently, as well as her work teaching yoga and other things and various healing techniques, has embarked on a psychology degree. So we'll no doubt hear a little bit about how that's going. But welcome, Teresa. This afternoon, we've got it down as vibrational frequencies and the cell, which covers just about anything we like to think of. But first of all, I'd just like to start on a personal note. I've just had a really busy few weeks doing finishing films, traveling abroad, being ill, getting stressed out, and seeing the change from autumn into winter and everything. And I feel completely depleted. And it's not just a physical thing. It's my etheric structure, I think, is all blocked up. So why don't we begin with you just giving us a little potted view of what this thing is, what this etheric body, this energizing principle is, and where does its energy come from?
Okay, thanks for that, Tim. I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people are feeling as you're feeling, and that as life has got busier and the pace of life has accelerated, and the events in the world are coming to people, through their screens, through their phones, people's energies are really suffering. Now, to understand your etheric energy, really, you have to wind back a bit your understanding in that everything is energy. So, if we come from the premise that everything is energy, all connected at different frequencies. So, things that appear material or solid to us are vibrating at a lower frequency, and things up on our mental plane, thoughts, feelings, when we go into meditation, we go onto higher planes. These are higher vibratory energies, and we would say they don't appear physical to us. Now, remember, there are different dimensions. We are in a three-dimensional reality here, so we are in matter. But energy is throughout all dimensions, throughout the cosmos, and it's all linked. So the fact that your energy is feeling depleted is more how tuned your system is to the energy in the environment, because prana, as it's called in yoga, or chi, it's called in Chinese medicine, or ki in Japanese therapy, is everywhere. So the pranic energy is like the life force energy. So everything living. Some people would say everything conscious has prana. So a rock that has different consciousness to you and I still contains condensed prana. And this prana is what circulates. It circulates through our physical body in what we call our etheric body. So if you think of your aura is not just your etheric body. In ancient wisdom teachings, your aura is composed of your mental body, your mind, your astral or emotional body, and your etheric or energy body. You could think of it as like your energy field, your energy signature. And all living things have it. The plants have an energy body, animals have an energy body. And this energy body, this is where prana can interact or interpenetrate the physical body. And so it circulates, it comes in through our chakras, and we have 49 in total and 7 major chakras, and they're like vortices, and the energy comes in through this vortex, and really the chakras ensure that you don't have too much prana coming in. You will only be able to take in as much as your etheric energy body can handle. And then once it's into the chakra system, it is distributed through the chakra system through a series of, well, 3 channels really. There's the Ida and the Pingala and the Sushumna that goes up the middle. And so we get that effect of the energy coming through each chakra as it goes up through, associated with our spine, causing each one to spin in a different direction. And that energy should circulate, and then it is distributed around our body through invisible network we call meridians. And you know about meridians. Meridians are what, if you have acupuncture or acupressure, they will place a needle on a certain point of a meridian, and that will unblock the energy channel of the whole meridian. And what happens is this etheric body of energy interpenetrates the physical body at the glands. So there's different glands associated with different meridians. There's different glands associated with different chakras. And when the system is all nice and clear and the energy is flowing in just the right amount, our physical body is energized and it is healthy. Okay. A physical body that is getting the right amount of energy is not an environment in which disease or inflammation can occur. Okay. And so while this is all circulating just fine, we're healthy, we have enough energy. But what people don't realize about prana, when you say you're lacking in energy, sometimes that can be that you've taken on too much prana. And people will look at me like, how can that make me tired? So what happens is throughout the day, especially through your chakras, through the spleen point, and I've simplified the system through a more complex interaction in the spleen, you're taking in prana from your environment. It's like we're interacting like our etheric body interpenetrates with our physical body. Our energy field interpenetrates with all energy, with the cosmos, with every living thing we come into contact with. And we are taking on prana. Now, when we get too much prana, or when there's too much prana come into the system, we need to sleep. Okay. And when we're asleep, the body redistributes this prana and makes sure it's all flowing. And this is why, for example, babies or young children need to sleep often, because they suck up so much prana. Why small animals have to sleep, why older people don't sleep as much, and why if you do something that works intensely with prana, like you might do an intense yoga class or a Tai Chi class or a Qigong class, or even have an acupuncture session, you'll feel incredibly tired afterwards and a desire to sleep. And that's your body just wanting to redistribute the energies from whatever intervention you've been involved in.
So once people understand that they have these bodies and these energies flowing around them, that presumably means then people can actually start to do things to positively enhance the energy flow and avoid doing things which are going to damage that energy flow. What are the principal do's and don'ts? What shouldn't you do and what should you do in order to improve things?
Okay, so what we need to focus on here is what blocks the flow of energy. And what we know is, and this goes right into esoteric healing, and you can read this in depth in the Alice Bailey books. The things that block the chakras, especially, and sometimes they're taking in too much, sometimes they're not taking in enough, are often emotional blocks. So these will be things in your psyche and your unconscious, unprocessed emotional issues from this life, or you could say karma from other lives. And that's a key. This is where Bailey will go so far as to say that 90% of dis-ease in the body is related to the emotional body or the astral body. It's a block in the flow. So that's one of the key things, is is releasing those blocks as they come up. And I'll talk a bit more about how you actually do that and how you recognize a block in a minute. But I just want to backtrack a minute, because all of those bodies that we have, our physical body, our etheric body, our astral body, our mental body, they all have their own vibration. So you could say they all have their own note or their own frequency. And the sum of those would be, in any given moment, your vibratory signature. Now, your personality, which we would say is the lower vehicles, mainly the chakras below the heart, so from the solar plexus down, your personality changes its vibration all the time based on how you're living. Okay, so it fluctuates a lot from day to day. So when we live in a way that, say we take the mental body, when we live in fear, worry, anxiety, with an overthinking, polarized in the logical, intellectual mind, that lowers the vibrational frequency of our mental body. When we are reactive emotionally, when we're angry, when we've not processed and forgiven emotional issues so that they're coming up, we're responding to the world through those emotional issues, that is affecting the vibration of our astral body or our emotional body. In terms of the etheric body, unfortunately, pollution, electromagnetic radiation, other people's energy. So all of these bodies, if we're around a lot of negative people, for example, who are vibrating at a lower frequency because they're caught up in fear and worry and doubt, that can affect our vibrational frequency. The thought forms that we hold in our mind, it's not the ones that pass through our mind, but the ones that are our regular thought patterns, affect the vibration of our mental body. And this is why the Buddhist ideas of harmlessness, purify the bodies, purify the chakras, purify this energy flow. But harmlessness in thought, harmlessness in intention is the heart chakra, harmlessness indeed is the more physical energies. And then when we don't feed our physical body with high vibrational nutrients, when we're lacking in minerals, when we're eating foods that have no minerals, when we're having a lot of alcohol or drugs, or we're basically putting poisons into our physical body, like the electromagnetic radiation or the radiation from your phones is coming into your etheric body, when we're putting poisons into the physical body by not eating ideally, by not exercising, by not getting outside in fresh air. All of these things are bringing our personality vibrational energy down. Now, to connect with our soul, you could think of our soul as on a much higher vibrational plane. So if our personality was down here in physical matter, vibrating, say in this moment, I'm vibrating at a measure of 40, but my soul's up there at 100. There's not much, there's no resonance, there's not much contact. Whereas if I change the way that I think and feel, my environment, my food, the way I live my life, I can raise my vibrational energy, and it can take lifetimes because I might have to process some of those emotional issues so that they're out of my physical energy system, out of my body, until eventually I start coming near a vibration that's up there with my soul's vibration. And then there's a resonance. And that's when the vibrational energy of the soul can start to really come down into the etheric body, and it comes into the soul can infuse our etheric body with energy. And you will notice this when people start to do their soul work. When they lift their personality, they're inspired, they follow their passion, they follow their soul work, they lift their vibration, all of a sudden they've got incredible energy, incredible enthusiasm, and they start making a real difference, and they know they're walking their soul path. They can feel it. They can feel it in that resonance with their soul and their personality. Now, most people, especially people interested in ancient wisdom's teachings, will be lifting up to their soul vibrations when they read something inspiring, when they lift their ideals, when they're presented with new information. But it's only a temporary, they're only having a bit of a connect with the soul. And then maybe they do something regularly that's lifting their vibration. So once, twice a week, they're lifting up into that soul. Maybe they're meditating every morning and bringing their vibrational energy up to the soul level. So they're connecting. But it's only when they start to live a life where their lifestyle and their way of interacting with the world is up on a regular soul vibration. So you could say that they are living with integrity with their highest ideals. So not just reading about it, not just talking about it, but actually living it. So this is where we would say in theosophy, when you're living your theosophy, you're not just learning about it. So you briefly lift that energy, you're actually living it. And when that happens, the incredible amounts of energy, insight, the soul is able to start to really guide the life, because the personality and the soul are now resonating. They're singing from the same hymn sheet. They're really working together. And this is when you get a massive acceleration in growth and evolution. And we start to work towards that soul infused personality. We start to trust the soul, trust the intuition. We start to let that guide our life. We lift up out of fear into love, knowing that we've got to, there's almost a conscious decision to lift up into those higher vibrations, to not be affected by the collective fear, to lift above that. And we start to live in a way that's more harmless to others. We don't cause harm, even in thought, emotion, or deed. We start to process those emotional issues as they come up. Our soul will present. Once the soul vibration's coming through, the soul will orchestrate situations in your life to show you what's blocking your energy. And sometimes that can be dis-ease processes in the body, where a particular part of your body where the blockage is affected. And this is how dis-ease can be karmic. It can be purifying, where how disease can actually be part of our growth process. And the same with any other challenges in life. The soul will bring just what you need, and you start to trust that whatever comes is coming for your highest good, because you're up in this vibrational resonance, if you like. And life really does. This is where life becomes magic. It becomes full of serendipity. You start to realize that the universe is really working for you and working through you, because just what you need arrives in your life at any given moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course, it makes absolute sense. And what's interesting here, you mentioned the ageless wisdom teachings, which we all revere and study. These go back into the mists of time. And yet now these ideas are coming back into the West in recent decades, certainly since the Second World War. But they do remain kind of quirky and cranky with mainstream medicine, don't they? They still don't sit very well. People are use abusive and awful terms about them being pseudo medicine and all this, that, and the other. How do we change that? Because here we have techniques that people can employ in their own lives. They can self-heal, they can self-connect, they don't need pills and potions and operations and all these things. How do you actually persuade more people, and particularly people who are practicing medicine and all the branches of it? How do you persuade them of these things?
Well, I do believe it is changing. Even in the time that I've been involved in, I'm involved in alternative healing techniques and use a lot of herbal medicine and this type of stuff myself. And even in the last 10 years, it is changing. There's more doctors that are open, especially to things like acupuncture for, say, pain management. I think it's happening, but it's slow. quite often people's dissatisfaction or the poor results they have with drugs or with the sort of targeting the symptom approach, which is what Western medicine does. Western medicine is fantastic for diagnosis. I would say to people, treatment, go and choose the best option, because quite often Western medicine is not. Remember, the reason plants work is because each plant has a vibrational frequency. So if your liver's out of balance because perhaps you haven't been looking after it very well, and your liver's vibrational energy has dropped down from optimal, if you take a plant that works with the liver and has a high vibrational frequency to help the liver self-heal, you take that herb and suddenly that lifts the frequency of the liver and the liver is able to self-heal. This is how herbal plant medicines work. And this was the medicine we were using thousands of years ago, and the medicine that is still survived despite our now Western medicine that tends to focus on symptoms. And I think as people are realizing that, yes, I might take a drug that alleviates this symptom, but it creates these other 5. I think people are starting to question the lack of that holistic approach that Western medicine has. And when they're dissatisfied with just continual treatment of symptoms, but no healing, because our body is ultimately, every cell in our body is capable of self-healing, and our body is designed as a self-healing mechanism. So there's no condition. If you're taking regular drugs or some other intervention that's just addressing symptoms, it's not addressing cause, you'll just take that forever and manage symptoms forever. And people are starting to question this ethos. And I think that it sounds awful, but as the Western medicine system collapses, this will pave the way for people being more inclined to look at alternatives. And it will also mean that the people that already have knowledge on these alternatives will be able to sort of gently rise and bring this knowledge. And I've noticed an increase on social media in posts about alternative medicine. For quite a while, they were suppressed, and that was an active process of suppression funded. I don't want to get political about it, but you can imagine why it was suppressed. And that is, people are starting to question that. They really are. And I think we will see a radical shift back to a more holistic way of looking at the body. Now, it'll take a little while before the chakras and the meridians and the etheric energy body are accepted, I suspect, in the mainstream. But you've got to remember that Indian Ayurvedic medicine, which is very popular in India and other countries, Chinese medicine still works on these principles. There are millions of people in the world who don't follow a Western medicine approach. Aboriginal, Maori, in Polynesia, they all have, the Native American Indians, they all have their own medicine system that is holistic. And people are starting to look to these because of their dissatisfaction with the sort of bullet approach of just tackling symptoms that we have in the West. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, sometimes they save lives. But you've almost got to look at Western medicine instead of being the be all and end all. Okay, what aspects of this? It's really good for diagnosis. If you need surgery, it's great for surgery. But if you need something that's working more on an energy level, maybe not the best option. There are other options. If you know, or your soul starts to really up the message that your physical condition has an emotional component, and this is where the psychological comes in, that often, healing trauma often gets rid of all sorts of symptoms. We start to see that when people start to say, yeah, there is an emotional component here. Can I have help with this? And often it's the thing about any emotional blockage or any emotional component, and it can come from this life, can come from past lives. The soul will keep bringing it up until you address it. And each time it comes up, it will come up louder and clearer in your body. And eventually, if you don't listen, it'll come up in the next life because you didn't deal with it in this one. And so what we do in the West is whenever an emotion, we don't like feeling uncomfortable emotions. So when they come up, we push them back down and we block those chakras again, or we distract ourselves with addictions, with alcohol, with overeating, with shopping, with social media, whatever we're doing. We don't want to feel those feelings. But what we don't realize is a very, very short-term uncomfortable feeling leads to a long-term health self-healing. And so increasingly people are realizing, these feelings, you never sent anything that you can't cope with. Sometimes you just have to sit with them until you start, especially if you're in a good space with your soul, and until you start getting insight into what's behind it all. And often, we will get insights. There'll be tears, there'll be release, there might be anger, there's a need for forgiveness, and it's out of the body because these energies are stored in our physical body, in our energy field. All of those traumas and all of those emotions that we haven't healed, we're walking around with them. And that's why people are reactive. Someone can walk into the room and you're like, whoa, that was a way overreaction there. And they're just coming from a place of their own wounds. Do you know what I mean? These own unhealed wounds. And other people act as a mirror to show us our unhealed wounds. And, from a ancient wisdom point of view, this is the dweller on the threshold. This is the sum total of everything unredeemed within us. And the soul just wants us to heal. It just wants our personality. It wants the personality up there on that resonance level because that's why we're here. That's what we're here
Yeah,
for.
I mean, the implications of all this are absolutely immense.
Oh,
I mean, the implications of all this are immense for a number of reasons because our allopathic medicine in the West, I mean, it's extremely expensive,
mm,
extremely expensive.
mm.
It seems to kind of suck people into it in an addictive way. And perhaps most importantly, it's not all that effective. And it also removes control from the people to whom it's being administered. Whereas with all this, it's down to personal responsibility, personal actions, food, exercise, not doing this, doing that, or whatever. And it puts you very much in the driver's seat. And that's going to require a huge change in mindset because of all the vested interests, not just financially, but intellectually in all this. It's quite a challenge, isn't it, all this?
That's part of the problem is people have essentially given over the responsibility for their own health. And there's a fear in that. It's like, oh, well, I don't know enough about it. If I take that on board myself. But the thing is you have an incredible wisdom in your body and through things like meditation. And once you get in contact with the soul, you gain confidence in the process of listening to your own body, of listening to your soul, of listening to those intuitive feelings about what might be the root cause of this problem. Or you can seek help from other people who work from this paradigm, who work from this holistic paradigm. And there are increasing numbers of people who do. But it is about building people's confidence because when people have become very reliant on a medical system and reliant upon, say, doctors as the experts and given over their responsibility, it's quite hard to take that responsibility back. And unfortunately, the system doesn't encourage you to do that.
So what can be done then? I mean, is it a question really of like-minded people getting together and forming their own healing groups or something along those lines?
I think it's education. It's empowering people to realize that, their body is self-healing, and actually you're the one who knows the most about what you need and what you need to heal. Nobody else can be as good an expert on your healing as you. And to learn to tap into that. I think it's education. I think it's encouragement. I think it's inspiring people. I think often word of mouth, someone hears about someone who has been told they're terminal and then has had a miraculous healing, or has tried something alternative, or people just get sick of getting nowhere and someone says, "Have you tried this? I tried this and this really worked for me." And so that sort of communion between people becomes really powerful. And in that way, social media could be a really positive thing, because it can, with the internet, information can be shared quickly. The trouble now is having enough knowledge to know the information from the misinformation, because obviously there's money to be made um, in this avenue as well, sadly.
I mean, maybe here is an opportunity because we have a health service which seems to stagger from one crisis to another in terms of staffing levels, money, all sorts of other things, politics,
Mm.
and many other things. People are waiting months, sometimes years for
Yeah.
particular treatments. There are said to be,
Yeah.
7 million people on the waiting list. So maybe here is an opportunity. People are going to get tired of this, and more people perhaps will start looking in other directions. Well, if this old way doesn't work, maybe we have to find another way of doing this in some respect.
Yeah, I think this will happen. And I think this will happen collectively as well. And people will realize you're not on your own. We are all connected energetically. And that as the collective vibrational frequency increases, people will start to change the way they live. They'll start to take responsibility for their own emotional responses. People are already looking for qualities in relationships now that were never even thought about a couple of generations ago. People are not putting up with things that were put up with a couple of generations ago. There's it's already there, and there seems to be an acceleration of that collective raising of the vibration of our planet, because what it also works the other way, and people often don't realize this, is every choice you make, and this takes a bit of thinking, it takes a bit to grasp. There are parallel dimensions. There are an infinite number of parallel dimensions, and our concrete mind has trouble with that idea, conceptualizing it. But you could think of your soul is on a dimension somewhere, and every choice you make every moment of the day, you choose a different dimension. So when you make choice, the red pill or the blue pill, when you make this choice, you go into that dimension. When you make this choice, you go into this dimension. When you make a choice where you feel that pull from your soul, you're heading into a dimension in which the soul energy is strong. And as more and more people realize that your actions, your choices in every moment matter, not just personally, but collectively, we will all lift to a vibration where medical systems and medicine that no longer resonates with the vibration of the collective will just die away, like leeches have, and like other practices that no longer serve us have just withered away, and new ways of doing things have come in. Already there's so many innovations in not using surgery so much, and using sound waves, and using vibrational energy to heal. Eventually, we will do psychic surgery. We will look back at this time and say, well, back in the dark ages, they actually cut into the physical body. They didn't know how to heal with energy. And so we're moving there. We really are. And I see lots of signs that there's an acceleration, especially at the moment. It's almost like the more that's happening in the world that's negative, it prompts more people to look for alternatives, to raise their vibration, to change the way they're living. And as our food supply gets more toxic and more contaminated, and our water supply does, and our air does, people are going to start to demand change that will be, affecting health on a more collective level.
And this represents a really fundamental freedom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It represents a freedom from other people having to have authority over your bodies. It represents a kind of self-liberation because you now are in the driving seat. You are the architect of your destiny. And this is something
Yeah.
that we talk about again and again and again in the ageless wisdom teachings and theosophy and everything, being in charge of our own destiny, taking responsibility, having a plan. And there will be many people who don't want this to happen, I imagine.
No, no. But it really is a test. Will you step into your sovereignty, your autonomy? Will you, do you know what I mean? And this is why it takes courage, because courage is there's still fear, but it's lifting. Courage is essentially lifting up into the heart chakra anyway, despite the fact that that fear is still in your solar plexus chakra. Maybe it's still in your kidneys, it's grasping, it's creating anxiety, but you're lifting up anyway because you understand these principles enough to know that that's the direction you need to go in. And one of the ways to align, one of the things that's coming through loud and clear, and I've done a whole talk on this recently, is when you come into the present moment, when you bring your presence. So your presence, I would say your presence is the part of you that is the witness in meditation. It's the part of you that knows you're conscious. Your conscious awareness of your consciousness is your presence. You could say in that moment when you're present, your presence is your soul, your higher self. And when you bring that into the present moment, you align with soul frequency. And that means that if you stay in that alignment, you will make decisions and choices that are soul governed, that are sovereignty, that are autonomous in that moment. And this is why people are starting to realize that mindfulness, for example, is a lot more than just being aware of your environment. It's bringing the soul that is you into this moment. And that, more than anything, is one of the fundamentals, is to stay present, because in any moment, your soul is there to guide you if you listen. You quieten the monkey mind. You discipline the mind through meditation. You learn to listen to the vibration of your soul, because your gut instinct, your intuitive, heartfelt, what's right for me, what's wrong for me, these are messages from the soul that guide you. And when you're present to that, when you calm down all the chatter of your mind and all the chatter around you of minds that are still fearful or wanting to control. And as you lift your vibration, this is a key. You are less vulnerable to manipulation and control by those who are operating at a lower frequency. You're just not as vulnerable. The most protection that you can have in the world of fear-based manipulation and control that we find ourselves in, the renegade, the revolutionary thing to do is to lift up into love anyway, is to raise your vibration. Whenever you love, love is a high vibrational energy. It's a high frequency. Love is the heart chakra connected to the soul. Fear is a low vibration. It's a controlling, a constrictive. Love is an expansive, a freedom. And so it doesn't matter really what's going on in the world around you. You can feel controlled, or you can just lift into love, and they can't touch you.
Well, I think on that beautiful note, we should leave it there because I don't think it gets much better than that. Teresa, thank you so much for another wonderful conversation. And I hope you all have a thoroughly good week. So from Leeds Theosophical Society, goodbye for now.